Dearest, dearest everyone wanted me to look for something in the band. Tell of a proper induction or punctual moment to start on something wherever. But there are no rights, and no punctual moment is to be made of what is a timelessness. A sort of furious result, this. Of societal discord there is much to be rid, in its conceit, itself a disorder of art. Any rebellion should not, must not, be initiated. Rather wrested to life from the bone of a one who cherishes the working, and yet the results of that misery is not being more a blessing than. A prism is that sort of mind through which all colors eke through as a drama, as the passion of the drama in each heart rattling weakly, at its weakest to be heard the best. Music, musicality, art is no rebellion, if a charade. That is, to be made into something with blessings or nods or punctuations. The declaration here is but to be felt a part of intermittently, without greeting, like an arrhythmia or the triple thrust of a heart in its voice. Ghosts. Ghosts in the heart. For what should I owe the pleasure of this pain? For then I smoke my cigarette until it burns my teeth. To smithering out your own goddamn blessing from the hydrogen is not yet for others to enthrall, unless they see in their eyes my own tears. Such a thing at most is a phantom, at worst degrading nonsense. And I would not some other in me fall off another's face. They know not why. That wisdom is a killing. My own weakness is not in the making of carbon, but in building off of sensation, until the carbon is lent to a place of ultimate weakness, and all colors through the prism become a mere passage through a screen. All is translucent, after all, if going through the same dull round that is each square of that screen, each window, each door. And the weakness of all creators of things, perhaps, lies in what they do at the point when lusting for the sensational feeling of creating overrides what has been done so far. Then the heart, in its patter, denies the music of the prism. And the heart has nothing to follow. And then what is denied in the artist, the creator of the thing, that is, that sensational rush, denied for long enough, will deny too the enthrallment of those whom have followed forth into this place of him or her, this stigmata, this one of a one who believes too rapaciously in his or her own good as relating to the vision rather than relative to it. So we, as those who are enthralled, smoke our carbon and remember what had moved before, while the artist dies. The true compound, of course, is when one who is an artist, or proclaims to be, has received a blessing or two, a nod, perhaps, one chiseling his, her head into the rock, sees themselves. Eventually, once they bother enough to quit banging their head against it, the face on which their head rests, the movement here, yet another nod and smile, merely a brain. But it is when they look up and find again the sensation of their own face that what seems for a time is created out of this measure of ghosts. No, tuneful space. Merely ghosts congregating together, though the best sort of weakness that. Such disenchantment, with an unbelievable surrender, is one who loses the child in the creation thereof. And that sensational rush becomes merely the charade of a thing of life that is forced to fit about what is in the language of no sort of tuneful space. So give way to silence beyond the silence. So give away. Give to the fact that the movement is from artist to artist, not self to self, and then all are enthralled by all. One does not feel the hardness of the rock his or her heads have felled. This is for some to go following, some not to. I'll see where it's at in the editing process. For that it all is the same shape. To the Lord and modern man there is no doubt. And the same face. There's nothing it doesn't say that art doesn't, rightly, at least somewhere. People each have lots of mind devoted to this end, this rightness. They make the shape in some way. We all do. What clogs our heads with the carbon, that remembrance, a vague knowing of a vagary, knowing the use to lay somewhere past. There is a way, as yet, to use a movement already approaching. There is no preaching of that which comes of the drummed moment, a need to desist. It goes on. Life does. Art does. It lives itself, and the people its own charade to manipulate as it will. We are powerless to stop the artist. They work towards, not from, a place, to escape from where they have been, and so as to concentrate the energies they find in life, and therefore create dominion over them in this new area of being. But the being itself is no part of the creation that is reality. We are but children. Children who play with toys, toys of intellect, toys. In the face of that venerable dominion, there is little that gives way. Here I say to you, you who listen to the listeners, I grow fractious out of those thoughts in my head, as if they each had a life and self their own, and all burdensome. I assume a reality of faces thereof, many, that give me advice or admonish. Each note, in a measure, has a similar expressive state, if given time to realize the imagery. To see a drifting hand in your mind's eye touch you as you listen to Down There is something. If it happens so fast that no sensation of it feeling conjured is involved. Who sees the science once he has been touched by what has resonated should not let go of the fact that art is art firsthand, and a fleeting science is any as applies to the dissection, if sprung from a motive power. As for the form, there is much to dissect of textured meanings, textured voices, textured sounds that all construe something to venerate, and editing to that clarity, that shape, that passion. Though Such is the wariness of connecting mind and body, thought and feeling, that it can seem conjured or contrived. Each in his own might assume a certain very pallor, way more concrete than is asked of the musical phrase, or music in the phrase. At least perceive a difference. I knew in my own way when I read Epipsychidion by Shelley this morning that I should do well to go to sleep upon finishing the poem, and not continue to whir about. Inspiration gets tired. Sure, one knows the thing and has the power, as with Emerson, but a head that is a goddamn castle still should know vastness the utmost abstraction, so as to know the wealth of it in being purely mesmerized. I have trouble with being affected by a piece of art and letting that be that without trying to figure out why. So perhaps I speak merely for myself. However, anyone who admits the justice in art knows the castle, that there are corridors about its pillared mess leading to a finer justice, a dirtier silence, not clarified. When in centuries hence we as a species will look upon art of today as not antiquated, but looming over the infinite into a greater bastion, we too will know that gesture to be a sturdy one. Wonder for music and the ideal for people immersed in it, at the least, do not lend themselves to that, but have a part of that lend themselves to them. And this part is irrefragable, infinite. It's infinite because it is for everyone who pursues it the same. That's why I make the hyperbole. Perhaps you may bob your head. Signs, beats, girdiness everywhere around presents itself in the people who want to know, I guess. Just a totally hyperbolic assumption. But some people are hungry for music in their gut, some for it in their head. And if I could, there'd be a time when nobody takes themselves seriously enough to see anything but everything in it all. Nobody can have an illimitable consciousness like that, though. You stop somewhere, knowing the game not win or lose, but hardly begun. So I write this. I say it is written. I grow out the factions. Friends, screaming to one another. We all scream all the time for love. So if you'll accept my scream here as being just me writing to you personally, take it as that. I'll be sure to not know a whit about you. I think I do know something about anyone I meet, if even briefly. People should not be scared of one who approaches one as a friend, despite not knowing them. There is a care taken in me to this end to grow the factions, build an army from words, phrases, like little messenger pigeons, you see. The old friend is an appreciation for the build of something artful, perhaps a bit unwise, and people know. People communicate the same to me. If only if it's me imagining that my phone rings, stopping the writing and not being able to find it. No need to respond. Merely I hope you see the movement, that it is not one, and the vision that it is for everyone. My mind boils with this. It aches to scream out for the love of people, but that ideal I say for Whitman's eyes. It is more their illimitable fate toward thee, harboring something much beyond fate at all, but a fate of will. The will, rather, towards whatever possible outcome, towards them all, which which involves more than one person. When a movement tempts fate by succeeding the vision of one to that of a mass of people, all bets are off, and it seems more the playing of unity to rations. Especially in the frame or shape of something, it goes off from what it was meant to remain in kind. Though years pass, the age of people remain. And one is left in the rehashing something of what sense in an old dog. Some lost harbinger got me there. To see the poetry. Something that made sense once. Something that howled. But movements are movements because they move. They take the need for the rebel and give him his lost appetite. The vision of a movement is not rationed out, though, either. It is not to be given, but received automatically without the cause. It is each outcome of itself met in that mass of people. It doesn't seem to me to be anything less than a movement that spoke of. The creation thus denies its idol in the output. It is not done out to put its meaning in the hand of some creative other alone, but the otherness of people. I do not speak of an unapproachable idol either, but the ideal soul of a person, that it can be reached. And it is in the presence of people that movements take place. Not to take a stand. No. More. To stand and feel in your standing. To approach gratitude. That is the synergy. And if I could this destiny be mine alone, I might as well deny that what keeps me going is people. It is bigger than us. And I'm sure you know. What I can do is excite you. To try and figure out the shape that anything so unreal could take. Myself, he is without a reason to make sense unless it is typeset. That I cannot provide the synergy as of yet to take myself to the personableness and gratitude of friends. It's not so bad. The vociferous mind clogs words out of meaning if known to be in the presence of a listener. So I shut my mouth there. But the gratitude is here. That the movement of the day is apocalyptic. That we sense a disturbing nature in how exactly we are influenced by culture. It is not a cesspool, though. Merely people, to me, no longer seem to know how to feel, because they have no time to process anything. Culture provides the crib we lay in, till the grave. And modern man lifts his head in forgetfulness towards some bafflement he in reality had more knowledge of with his head lowered. And the reason here is simple. Discard the necessitous culture of a thing and have art be art, not for its sake, no, but for the sake the vision might be adequately perceived by the individual as their own literal interpretation, outside of influences of any kind. This has little to do with anything linear. For example, as I type, I listen to the grimmest Radiohead album, Amnesiac, of course. But I do not feel any sort of lament here, not even in thinking on an apocalyptic. Less that, and more an apocalypse of the mind of feeling. These words are but words. And I consider it a masterful greatness to know I can know, and search away from the knowing. I, as all people, cannot loose the bounds of feeling without time. but at the least I know without to be different from what is within. The movement is such as to be away from something that is dominated for what seems an age, that we are scared. We are scared of relevance. It comes at us from all angles. It is the ultimate hunter. And that things can be said like, don't be scared. Inevitably take us to places where we are, especially if we know not why we should be. Such as the lunatic's ramble, an endless reassurance for days, beyond when the need for one to feel reassured was met. But we speak on the web of such things all the time. I know I do, but others do as well in a much more implicit way. I merely see the poetry in something so willful as the need for all fellow sufferers to apologize for being, that people cannot wrest themselves from loneliness ever. It's a sad state for modern man, that we return to the past, find in it the things we knew as a child, that they are not that way. But maturity is no fall from grace, and the maturity of a vision surely not. The otherness of people in them is no loneliness, though, and perhaps we are struck by the insurmountable berms of culture enough to assume a sad or happy state to be the ultimate return to childhood. But this is pop. Totally, undeniably pop as shit. I see the most complexity in a child, however, the fact that in him or her they have the freshest mind for feelings. However, sadly, without the knowledge to wrangle them. And I give my sadness that whatever movement, it disregards the reassurance that in reality is an apology for suffering, as if people could melt away from their seethe. Well, will it? Will oneself to see the child of the now as moving alongside the bones we were forced to acquaint to a simpler state of being later on. All the while the child is suffering in us, his or her personal cage. For we live and live, and better if this be not checkered with queries as to our consequences as individuals. The Heidegger I know lives in forgetting. This is Dasein, and forgive me if I indulge abstractions once more, for the sake of proving to you that time is for no sake. We as people cannot indulge one train of thought. The forgetting of one via gratitudes of others, laughter, takes us away from an emotive place that all communication will ultimately lead. It is the angered child. They wish themselves out of their cage. They bruise. They weep. They feel the conundrum that is a guilt for being. Whatever movement I could think of takes this guilt for being and transposes it to the enormous being of culture, a nearly insurmountable reign of something beyond us. The something beyond fills us all with bones, flesh, blood. But it is a notion of this, while we live, that shifts and aches to fit around this void, this damnable culture whore. Therefore, discard the culture whore. Discard the guilt. Find the perspective of oneself to lead to oneself. Do not lead anything anywhere but there. And most of all, notice what is nonlinear, as I'm sure you do. Otherwise, we would not listen to Animal Collective. But that band has a deliberation that is very much a science, and a motive power to me in being a relation of the drama of myself and music. It is to go down the rabbit hole, to make a science of emotion, however. But as well there should be no set, nor happy. Such clarifiers muddy up how a person should feel about the creative output of their age. Ha! That's it. Discard the sad. Discard the happy. Save those for what you truly feel to need them for. I do well for anyone to see anything I write as sarcastic. Even the epic shit. It's all a love letter to the life in words, anyway. And I begrudge literature that, perhaps, and find myself sarcastic at times in reading over the words without inflection. Ironically, sarcasm is mostly inflection. Lose that, and most anything can be. But that's besides the point. Sometimes we may force ourselves, the vision itself, alone. That is as much a conundrum. We are not an epic generation. We are not a generation that is anything but counting the days for the sake of some ill hue of freedom. The reaching, of course, is in letting one's mind go, and turning down whatever makes us look up. Discard symbolism. Discard anything but a literal interpretation. Utmost simplicity is needed in understanding Wordsworth, who's the mind of nature. To say simplicity of mind and poetry in the same sentence might seem a dissimilar, but it is adjunct to the prescience of modern man. His strength is in a longing for the simplicity of childhood, as relating to the simplicity gained in knowing so much to know. Whether a person thinks they know it all is an obnoxious self-regard, also besides the point. Simplicity of mind is the ultimatum. It is an apocalyptic ultimatum, especially for a generation of youth who see themselves as epic beings. But it has always been for this that we apologize. There is a sleepless, restless going to the ways of literalism. For one must dig way deep to find the simplicity in taking everything literally and not feeling confused. Literalism is the mind of the child. And the child breathes that as its own epic standing. The hiddenness of the cage in one's lungs, that is where the dissimilar feelings lie. And in the need to immediately make sense of what we feel, we lose our sense to a pack of dogs. To take things simply, literally, is no oblivion, though. And to this, I leave the dallying wink for a confused, unutterable God to misinterpret. There is no wisdom. There's only suffering. What's new? Nothing. The earth has been around forever. And to say one is epic is its own devaluation. To say that a denial of this is not ennui, though, but a happy truth. Happy used here as the only happiness I'll give to. The happiness of truth. That's where the movement is. In an intelligent appreciation of philosophical, artistic truths as being the happiness they are. Don't be scared. It's all fancy anyway. That people are put off by philosophical questions to me is yet another sadness. And to this I'll conclude for now. decides to say that all emotions are complex and beyond words. So goes the movement of literalism. An ultimate complexity, simply felt in an epic transcendence that is really us hearkening back to a time before a fall from grace meant anything. It still doesn't. One can't combine who they are with who they were without losing an ideal of time that is always recurrent anyway. That we shed our layers by the moment, not the minute. No negation, no ennui, no listlessness. Pure intensity is the simple feeling here. It is the artistic swerve. And it is the ultimate sense, to get us to a timeless reason. Time when we do not look at our watch. Instead, are mesmerized. And this surely is no fancy, but for the fancies of intellect, ceaseless, obstinate questioning, telling us why we should feel such and such a way. Don't be scared, the philosopher says of his abstraction. It is as much a reach inward as out, and no posture.